This is the Agile Uprising Podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Leslie Morse here, and welcome to another episode of the Agile Uprising Podcast. This is another episode in our ORSC LAB series, and I'm delighted to be joined by former colleague of mine and a friend, Shaila Reddy. Shaila's an ORSC trained and certified coach that is on a journey of transforming organizations by putting together a really great set of adjacent skills and competencies and things that she's mastered. It's everything from being a thought leader to consulting. She brings training and coaching together all across lean, agile, systems thinking, design thinking stuff, helping organizations scale, bringing in DevOps. Like, she is master guru, trusted advisor, partner for her clients. I've heard all of the great stories. And Shaila, I'm so glad that you're going to be here with us today to share some of your stories and inspire the listeners.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. Is that me?
That's you. Take that in. Like, what's going on for you right now?
Wow. No sweat for starters. But yeah, I mean, delighted to be here and delighted to share some of the celebrations as well as scars that have happened, right, throughout my journey. And if it's helpful to you, and if you can take one thing, out of my learnings, that would make me such a happy person. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I already love that you're really pointing towards the vulnerability of talking about the stumbling points.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because it is those moments where we're like, oh, this is not going how I want it to, where there's so much richness and discovery if we can just kind of stay in the lion's roar.
Yeah, definitely. And, in today's world, so many constraints within which we operate, right? It gets harder and harder, or at least that's the story that we keep telling ourselves, right? To really stay true, right? To demonstrate that courage, to really play these meta skills, to be deeply listening for really where, our clients want to go.
Yeah.
Not need to go, but want to go.
Want to go, which I think is an important distinction, especially as we think about ourselves as agilists and working with organizations on their transformation, because sometimes it's where we want them to go, not necessarily where they might want to go. But before we dive in, let's just do a little bit of design, right? Mm-hmm. You and I talked before the episode around some of the topics you want to make sure kind of come up in our agenda per se. But what kind of atmosphere do we want to create in this episode?
That of openness.
Okay.
Right? Everything is out on the table. Definitely want to be able to respect different opinions, diversity in thought, right? I don't want this to be a one-way conversation. Mm-hmm. I definitely want it to be bidirectional. And I know you have been a coach, right? In many, many instances, agile or not, you've been coaching. So it's great to be able to exchange ideas and thoughts and, how the conversation is going. So definitely want that.
Yeah,
a bit of fun.
Listening to you. Oh, and I love that you said fun, because in my head, this metaphor of trapeze artists was coming up to me, right? And like the exchange and the swing and the back and forth and like the play of that is just what was going on in my head.
I love that visual, and I'm a very visual person, so thank you, Leslie. Going to play into that. Takes a lot of coordination, trust, and respect really for that act to really happen, right? And for value to be delivered. So, yeah, I mean, let's play it. Let's trust each other, respect each other, again, for the greater benefit of all the coaches out there, all the aspiring coaches out there that want to try, the ORSC skills and competencies and bring it to their way of being.
Yeah. I will plus 1 million everything you've said. Tactically, with that sort of vision of atmosphere in mind, is there anything you need from me, sort of as I'm hosting the episode, to make sure that we can create that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess inserting a, fun, intentionally setting up a fun atmosphere would be a good thing, because
Great.
I am sometimes prone to getting heavy and serious.
So I'll bring the silly if you need me to.
Absolutely. I can count on you for that. Yeah. And then, not being afraid to ask even the difficult questions. Okay. It's all right.
Yeah. And I'd say that one thing I'd ask from you on that similar thread is like, if I ask you something and there is like an answer is not present for you, like that's okay. Mm-hmm. Not every question has to land.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I might say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I might very well say, I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome. We've pointed to a lot of meta skills already. Like I mentioned sort of like, or you mentioned openness, I think curiosity, exploration. What are some other meta skills we want to play with?
Fun, like we said, for sure. Let's see, what else? Courage may be one thing, right? As we try to remember some of the examples and scenarios, it's going to take courage on my part to demonstrate my vulnerability. But yeah, I mean, it's another thing as the listeners are listening, and some of you may actually identify yourselves as I'm explaining this. Obviously, I'm not going to share. I'm going to protect the innocent here.
Yes.
As best as possible. But yeah, I think just holding that space and being okay with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just, there's such a warm, fuzzy feeling kind of in our virtual container right now already. And so I'm sort of channeling it to the listeners as well, that they can just sort of, whether, you're out on a walk or you're sitting on your sofa, you're in the car going somewhere, hopefully, because you're not stuck at home anymore, maybe your economy's opening back up a little bit. But may this feeling of coziness like envelop you as you go on this journey with us is kind of what I'm wishing for all the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it's an informal chat on how the journey has been and so on. So yeah, come on in with us, right?
Come on in, yeah. As we fly in the air as the wonderful trapeze artists.
Yes, yes.
They could be snuggled in like a recliner watching us.
Yes, watch us. Oh, now I'm getting the visual of the Cinemark, those reclining chairs.
Yes,
that I so dearly miss.
I know. One day. All right. So Shaila, before we get into like this, let's just like ground everybody in, right? Agile practitioner by background, but before you even found Agile, what was really your expertise and discipline?
Yeah, so I was a techie, believe it or not. My first job was in a .com. Those things, they existed back then.
Yeah.
Before it all went bust. I was a developer, and so working with people, doing my stuff was one thing I was good at. And then as I progressed through that, it became very evident to somebody along my career path that, oh, this person can not only do her own stuff, but she can help others too in different ways. And, oh, look, maybe we need to give her some more responsibilities. And before I knew it, I was, lead, and I was managing people, and I hated it from the beginning. I never liked that word manager because I was a born techie. I'm like, no, I got to be doing stuff. I got to be shoulder to shoulder with people. So long story short, I think my first Agile gig was in 2004 when I was working with iterative methods. That was my first foray into it. And I was like, oh, look, this is so much better. I can stop lying and I can stop telling people to lie even, right? And, they'll get what they see and we don't have to wait all this, time and so on and so forth. And I never looked back. It's been Agile ever since, from project manager to a recovering project manager to a scrum master of 3 teams. Quickly, I had 5 teams. Before I knew it, I had 11 teams, and I never knew of scaling methods. So I had my own struggle inventing scaling methods even before SAFe came on. Along came SAFe, then started adding more scaling, and it's like, oh, so that's how you do it. I wondered why. No, now I know why I was failing so miserably. right? So there was that part of the journey. So yeah, all in all, to sum it up, I've been coaching teams since 2008. Um, Helped a lot of enterprises along the journey, if you will, worked with a lot of people. More recently, have been working with teams of leaders, but all in all, I find myself and my passion to really working with teams, whether they are, development teams, whether they are teams of leaders or so on. I feel like that is really my true calling, where I can look at the big picture and I can help navigate, right, people within this big picture and not just, I almost find it limiting when it's just one piece part because of this experience.
Yeah, yeah. When it's just listening to you talk about that, it's no wonder you were attracted to ORSC, right? Organization and relationship systems coaching. It is working with systems and teams and everything. How did you find ORSC, and what really attracted to you in the first place?
That's another long story, but to bottom line it really, I did attend the Agile coaching course by Lisa Atkins, and I had the privilege of having a one-on-one conversation with her, because I really watched her demonstration in person, and it moved me, and I really wanted those skills. I wanted that, right? So I approached her, had a one-on-one conversation with her, and she actually told me two things that I remember like crystal clear to this day. And this is so many years ago, right? She told me, Shaila, I think given your personality of what I've seen in the last 3 days, I think you would really enjoy ORSC. But here's the deal. These are two sides of the coin, right? I want you to explore coactive coaching as well as ORSC. Do the fundamentals for both of them, and then make a good decision for yourself. It's not because Lisa told you to do one thing or the other.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate her for doing that, because that's exactly what I did. And the way my life was going and my work was going, I did do fundamentals of both coactive as well as ORSC. And then decided that ORSC was more fitting to my calling, really. Not to say that I won't go back to coactive. I think there's true power in terms of transforming individuals, right, to get them on their journey eventually, right?
Yeah. And I do think there's something you're pointing to that's I haven't done yet, but I think is something that for people that go through ORSC training, adding or the five, dimensions of ORSC, right, to the coactive fundamentals course just takes what you learn in the ORSC training series and turns it up a notch. Like everybody I've heard has said some variation of that. And I know I'm holding myself back because I haven't taken that. I haven't added like the accelerator to it yet. But it's on my list of things to do.
Absolutely. So 100% plus one that. And for all your listeners, absolutely. I think, like I said, they're two sides of a coin. They're sister organizations for a reason. There's not so much of an overlap, even though many people believe that to be true. Having done the training, I believe these are bodies of knowledge that are essential for you as a coach dealing with human systems.
Yep, absolutely. And so this journey of ORSC, can you I know we're going to really unpack it when we get into your full agenda, because you want to talk about things like expectations of what Agile coaches are and stories of like those some of the times you've been able to unstick clients when it's gone well and hasn't gone so well, and kind of like how we take this ORSC stuff and apply it with these other adjacent bodies of knowledge. Mm-hmm. But like, just want you to really kind of be crystal clear for us, given the work you've done as an ORSC practitioner, how would you say it has best served you as an Agilist?
In many ways than I can count. But if I had to bottom line it really serves in understanding the why, right? It helps me take the system view almost naturally speaking, right? Okay, so if I'm trying to change a particular behavior, because again, Agile coaching is not just about process coaching, as you very well know. While that may be true in the initial stages, we've progressed to a world where Now it's all about being agile, which then points back really to the ability to change behaviors, to impact an entire culture of an organization, right? In order to really understand that organizational development, you really need to understand the relationships, right? And so the way ORSC has helped me inherently is to really take on that system view of things when approached by anything to say, okay, why is this particular thing happening? And if I want to change this, do I need to intervene first of all or not? And if an intervention is really necessary, how might I best intervene that impacts the whole rather than just a piece part?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's inherent in my thinking because I am a trained lean practitioner first and foremost, right? My master's was back in lean. So I studied TQM. That's my thesis, really, right? So coming from that background, holding those values near and dear to my heart, systems thinking is a natural.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you put these ORSC competencies and every technique that we learn, these tools, as we call them, within the ORSC body of knowledge, they are so inbuilt with systems thinking in there, right? How do you understand the whole in order to impact and get, the pieces and parts over the edge?
Yeah. And I think there is also something in this around awakening within others their ability to be aware of the whole.
Yeah.
So that just their whole sense of being and impact and connectedness has an opportunity to be transformed.
Yeah, because again, if you think about it, right, if all of us are connected in this organization somehow, it's one thing if one person is transformed, right? It shouldn't be really at the cost of other people within that same system. Yeah. They have to understand the impact they're having, right, in order to take this journey as a whole.
Yeah. Right? It reminds me of the some of the things I heard ORSC faculty say, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's really what you're pointing to.
Absolutely. And it's the slowest cog in the wheel, to come back to, the engineering metaphor, really, right? And so you're trying really to impact the system as a whole, not necessarily by breaking down the pieces and parts, but together. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it's all interconnected. So I think let's just start actually with your stories. If you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's just like, it'll give us a beautiful way to kind of unpack these other things that you're interested in sharing with folks.
Yeah. So I think the best way to say it is, when you're going through training is one thing. Putting it into practice is really where the learning becomes real, right? For anybody, right? And we do this even with our Agile stuff. That's why we combine Agile training and coaching. And we say, okay, we train you a little, and then we look at where your blocks are, and then we continue to coach you, right? Yeah. Help you along the way. So similarly, even with ORSC, when I got into training, the first thing I remember so vividly in the fundamentals course, I was like sitting there, we were doing the string exercise. I'm sure everybody's familiar. And for those of your listeners that aren't familiar, it's about really how understanding at a deeper level what a team is, right? A team is not just made up of individuals. It's really about them working together towards this common goal, right? They're interdependent at all times, if you will. So as we're working through this exercise, which is helping us understand at a deeper level these relationships, I'm sitting there thinking, how might I apply this in a real world setting?
Oh, so much parallel processing is going on when you're in training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just, right from the get-go, that's the mindset I had adopted. I was so curious to learn this and then wonder what it might be like. Wondering is one thing, and then bringing it into practice, right? I wonder if my client would be ready to, try this, right? And see how it goes. So that's exactly what I did. As soon as I came out of the training, we had a workshop that was going on, and I asked one of my co-facilitators, another Agile coach, not ORSC trained, said, could we use this as a warm-up? right? There's a deeper meaning to this, but this is a team that we haven't, dealt with. They're wanting us to do a workshop. I think it was something about business agility, right? Helping them deal with the challenges they were facing with business agility. That was the theme of the workshop. And here I am trying to say, we should do the string exercise for a warm-up activity, which thank goodness my co-facilitator really, said, yeah, let's try that. Because the feedback we got back was really interesting. While they thought they were a team, right? What they learned through that warm-up activity was, oh, so this is how it happens. When I drop the string, this is really the impact. And this is how we all need to be working together, really keeping with the theme of business agility, right? That comes later. First, we need to be a team and why it's so important for us to work as a team of leadership. I mean, that in itself was so powerful. Yes, there was some feedback where people thought it was woo-woo and why are you making me, play with strings and I got more important things to do and so on and so forth. But majority of the feedback pointed to the usefulness of putting such a simple exercise out there as a warm-up. Didn't have to spend a whole lot of time.
Yeah, there's something really important in what you just said, Shaila. The simple exercise.
Absolutely.
It is so easy for us to overcomplicate things and make them more elaborate than they need to be, when sometimes a simple piece of string between two people's hands can just unlock like what would have taken 2 days of just conversation.
Yeah, I mean, through that exercise, they even went into a conversation of Tuckman's model. What happens when a person leaves the team? Oh my God, we got to introduce this change all over again. Oh my God, it's going to take this whole stages of team development, right, for us to get back to where we were and so on. Very, very interesting conversations. Didn't take a whole lot of time, 20 minutes tops, right? But so much rich learning that came out of that, right? And that started, it motivated me to continue down that path. I'm like, oh, that's the power. Imagine if I could learn more and bring back more. And yes, right, with all honesty, if I were being honest with you as well as the listeners, there were some pieces and parts that maybe I would have changed the wording ever so slightly, right, for corporate speak, right, for corporate appropriateness, if you will. But the power is the power, right? The competencies are the competencies, and they show up in so many ways that can be truly appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's such a great story, because another thing that you sort of point to there is, the clients that we're working with, whether they're like your client and you're an internal coach or you're hired externally to come in and work with an organization, they have expectations of what you're going to do and how you're going to show up.
Oh, yeah.
Shaila's going to come teach me. Shaila's going to come be a consultant. Shaila's going to be my mentor. Shaila's going to this, Shaila's going to that. They've made up all these stories about how Agile coaches are going to show up and what we should and shouldn't be. But at the end of the day, right, it's like we're people working with people to find better ways of delivering value.
Absolutely.
And so how do you navigate, now that you have actual professional coach competencies, part of your toolkit, navigating those expectations of how to show up, how to hold true to your and be in integrity with everything in your toolkit and all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I won't tell you that I'm 100% successful just because I'm trained and certified and a professional. I do fall into, shall I say, pits of despair from time to time, But all in all, I think I have gotten much better at holding myself in that curiosity space, especially when I'm first approaching a client, right? It's much less about what do I know and what can I bring to the table. It's more about what does this client really want, right? Where does this client really want to go? What are their goals, hopes, dreams, fears, right? Challenges, if you will. That system entry piece is so important. And I tell you, I have struggled with it in my past lives, and I continue, right? I mean, it's a learning journey each time, every time.
Yeah.
I would hope that I've gotten better, and these trainings and these certifications have really given me the skills, right, and practice to get better. But really, that system entry point is so crucial.
Yeah. And can you just kind of break down, right? Because I think it's easy for people to be like, systems entry, it probably means this. But in the way you're defining system entry, what are some of those components of it?
Yeah. So really, the key thing for system entry really is to understand the client's agenda, right? For us to be, even before you try to set up an agreement of a coaching agreement of sorts and so on and so forth, yes, there's a contract and all of that has happened. But as you're hitting the ground, for you to understand who are the players, what are their hopes and dreams and fears, what do they want, if you will, right? What are the expected outcomes, if you will? Are they able to clearly, and many times, I'll say often, 99% of the time, they don't know what they don't know. They think that they want X, Y, and Z. And as you enter and you start to ask these questions, right? Okay, so you want this outcome, okay? At the end of it, if coaching was successful, what would that look like? When you ask that question, that's a very difficult question to answer, in my experience at least, right? They might have said or put in a contract, I want you to coach this many teams and I want them to be agile, whatever that means. And maybe they have a maturity, I want them to go from green to, dark green or whatever it is, right? They might have had some sort of thing. But when you start to ask these questions, what's the impact, right? And how do you quantify and how do you measure that impact? And what would that look like? What would success look like? That is so key. To have an honest dialogue around that is key, in my experience.
And what are the ORSC kind of underlying skills, competencies, and tools that you actually put into practice to do that well?
Yeah, so some variation of high dream, low dream. Okay.
And just for those that don't know what it is, can you just talk about it just a tiny bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So a good metaphor for high dream, low dream is really expectation setting, right? It's, if everything were to go ideal, this would be my set of expectations. I would want, this many teams to really be able to pivot on a dime, and I would be able to see this many experiments. Teams are really experimenting, and I have all of this going on in my organization. I have high performance teams and blah, 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 right? That's my ideal state, high dream, ideal state. And then there are the low dreams, right? And that may point to some of their current state as they're talking, which is, here's what's really going on, right? While I want
lots
this,
of turnover, people are frustrated. These two departments aren't talking at all, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And you start hearing really clearly, you're listening deeply to understand, what are their fears, right? So here they are, the list of hopes and dreams, and here they are, their challenges and fears, and it gives you some sort of a current state, right? And for us Agile coaches, that's really ideal state, right? Aspirational state, current state. Now, how do you make the jump from here to there? What are all the stuff that need to happen in order for this to meet this, right? And it's not you as the coach that can do all of this, right? Suddenly make this current state get to, ideal state. It's really, how do you put in the right balance of interventions so that the system as a whole can move in that direction?
Yeah. And so as you're doing this, are you standing fully and only in the coaching stance, or how do you merge in, right? Shaila is consultant, Shaila is mentor, Shaila is teacher.
Yeah, that's a great question, Leslie. And it's definitely a dance, right? The moment, I hate to give you the consultant answer, such as it depends. But truly speaking, if I were to be really truthful, every system, right, is on a different point in the Agile journey. So I'm going to take the Agile metaphor here. I also coach couples, but for the purposes of this particular piece of the discussion, let's say we're talking about the Agile journey, right? When you're working with a system and trying to understand and enter the system, really understanding, okay, what are their, high dreams and low dreams, it gives you a picture of, okay, what do they know and what do they not know? Truly. Okay.
It's all revealing.
Absolutely.
More and more information for you to be able to work with.
And sometimes that revealing points to the need of a little bit of education. Okay. As in, they truly haven't been exposed to, for example, let's say you're working with an organization that wants to bring on more experimenting, that wants their managers to take on the role of coaching as opposed to managing. So when you're working with that, has this set of leaders exposed to experimentation, the lean startup cycle? You start to listen for, are you hearing, right, some of that, or is there a need to educate? So that's when I might tip the balance a little bit with their permission and say, okay, I hear you wanting to, get your teams to more experimenting. Can you tell me more about how the lean startup cycle is being implemented in your portfolio layer, right? Then I can get more clues. Have they ever heard of that? Have they not heard of that? Okay, that gives me an opportunity, right? And I may have to then take the stance of a teacher, if you will, and train them a little bit on what does lean startup look like, right? What are some things over there, and so on and so forth. So it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with advisory, right? Many times I find myself, with a team of leaders, and I can't, you know who you are if you're listening to me, leaders, right? You're a consultant, just tell me how it needs to be.
Yeah.
Umpteen million 100 times, right? And unpacking that using the unfolding skills that ORSC teaches us, right? To really see, are they really ready to take that advice? Is the system ready and primed to take that advice? Do I have permission as a coach to advise, right? Understanding all of that and then dancing in the moment and putting on that consultant hat is key.
Yeah.
And this is not this is a consulting session versus this is a coaching session versus this is
happening all the time. It's fluid.
All the time.
But there is something that is buried within this around, you can't coach people that don't explicitly agree, yes, I want to be coached. And even if someone says and acknowledges, yes, I want you to be a coach for me, doesn't mean that they're actually coachable.
Absolutely.
So do you have any of those stories where you've thought you have had agreement, or not even thought, you have had agreement to employ a coaching stance, and what you really uncover is that this client actually is not coachable, so I can only employ teaching, mentoring, consulting, facilitating?
Yeah. So yes, I have, again, by nature of contracts, right? So let's say I've been put in a situation where I am the designated coach, whatever that means, right? So I get in, I do systems entry, I explain to them what coaching truly means and so on. And I think the first signal I pick up, right, is when the leader or the individual or a few individuals within the system that I'm coaching are not really taking action, if you will, agreed upon action from some of these coaching sessions. When I don't see, the rubber meeting the road, I start to pick up the first signals of, okay, maybe not. Why is that? Right? I'll have further conversations. And as I get deeper and deeper, if it's a situation of I have been pushed a coach, right? I recognize that and I say, okay, that's great, right? And I can do the best I can in terms of, okay, this is the advice I can give, and I'm being explicit at that point. I can give you this advice, take it or leave it, right? I can, offer you this particular training. It's up to you, right? And so on and so forth. But to me, if a person is coachable, right, then at the end of the day, as these coaching sessions are happening, right, they are able for themselves to see the success that they, set out to see.
Yeah,
They are
there's
taking
something.
actions.
Yeah, there's something that to me is almost a little bit of an ethical issue of at the end of the day, we can't be agile for them, no matter what stance we're employing.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't be agile for them. And it's really irresponsible in my mind to accept money from a client when the moment you're going to walk out the door, they're just going to revert back.
Yeah. And unfortunately, yes, I found myself, in that situation through all of these years of coaching. Absolutely, 100%. By virtue of the assignment that I'm on, the company I work for, me, myself, not recognizing until I'm halfway through, and so on and so forth. That said, there have been instances, and again, the listeners over here, I'm sure one of you is them, where I have walked away from an engagement saying, yeah, this is just not going to work out. I mean, if you're going to do your own thing, then I don't want to waste your money further on this, right? It has happened. So both ways are true, and people do change. I think the interesting part of the story is, while I have walked away from an assignment, a few years later, I was pursued again by this same set of individuals for further coaching. Having understood the value of coaching, they have approached me again.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's interesting as we're talking about this, I'm actually thinking about a business partnership I coached completely outside of the Agile realm. The very first session I had with them, their homework was to find a time to video chat with each other and talk about the business outside of a coaching session. Because of the global pandemic and other things, they hadn't seen each other in months. And they're like, oh my gosh, I see you on this coaching session because I was using Zoom. And they didn't do it. And I didn't push them on it. I was like, that's your choice. It's not me to project or find you right or wrong for this. But they had agreed to kind of a package of 6 coaching sessions. And what they self-identified in almost the entire last session was me leading them through designing how they were going to adopt video chatting as a new ritual and habit for continuing to work on their partnership with each other. And I'm like, isn't it sort of ironic? That was your first homework and it didn't stick, but this is where we ended up. And I think that that's the hard thing, because what you're pointing to as well, Shaila, is like sometimes as coaches and consultants for hire, we get put into engagements where we feel like we're set up for failure. We weren't able to actually be part of it. The client doesn't seem coachable. But we are making a difference with these people, even if they aren't hitting what we believe their benchmarks of agility should be.
Yeah, I mean, benchmarks are one thing, but, having had the joy and privilege of being through this, certification, if we agreed that this is the outcome you want from coaching, right? Yeah. You told me what success would look like. I'm telling you, these are the actions, right? We agreed through the coaching session, you said you would take these actions. But you just didn't. Consistently, you took no action on it, right? But you've been hearing just exactly what happened in this scenario of mine, right? Said, okay, we walk away. That's fine. This is not working out. I'm not able to unblock whatever it is, right? That's not allowing you from taking personal action. A few years later, rinse and repeat, it's a different scenario. This person has grown, has transformed. I won't say because of me. Maybe so many other things, right? The environment, the situation, whatever it is, right? Much more amenable. Okay, now I understand. When you're coaching and I say I'm going to do X, I should be doing X.
Yeah.
And if I can't do X, let's talk about what's really blocking me from doing X.
Yeah. And sometimes that unsticking people isn't just applying your coaching skills. You're actually unsticking people by bringing in adjacencies from other disciplines.
Perfect.
So what are those things that you're bolting on to really give you that beautiful Mary Poppins bag?
I
See, there's
love
the
that
fun.
metaphor. Absolutely. I was thinking more of a handyman with a tool belt. But I love Mary
But there is
Poppins.
something magical about a Mary Poppins bag.
Oh, yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
spoonful of Agile.
I can give you some examples, if you will, right? So let's say I was just conducting a workshop again with leaders, and we're trying to, everything is a workshop, right? We don't like to call it a training session. It's really a working session with them across the table. They're trying to work a very difficult problem, okay? So they're working a problem, they're designing some stuff, and all of this happens. We've used a bunch of ORSC stuff really to get all the diverse, perspectives in there. All of that has happened. Then, I merged it with one of the liberating structures method, which is the what cube or what so what, now what technique. Okay. So let's just take a moment here and say what all happened. Okay. We discussed all of these things. These are all the themes that emerged. Yeah, so what? What patterns are we really seeing? Put all of these discussions together. What is the pattern that is really emerging? What are the conclusions? As a consultant, I don't have to come in there and tell you what patterns I'm seeing. You guys are leaders in the room. What patterns are emerging for you? Yeah. Right? And to be there bold and stand and let them actually reveal, right? And holding some of those ORSC competencies, such as, yes, this is a naturally creative, intelligent team. They've been working for a few hours on putting all of this stuff together. Now it's time, right? So using that and then finally saying, okay, now what? That's great that we found patterns. What are you going to do about this? Holding them accountable, if you will, and bringing it to action.
Yeah, it's like, and you're really pointing to that kind of divergent and then convergent sort of model. And I think that's one of the hardest things is actually hold the space long enough for the fully divergent conversation to happen, because there's so much of a bias towards action. Yeah. The first thing we find and we latch on to, we just want to converge on that and go, when you're actually missing out on the rest of the things that need to kind of be revealed and emerge.
Yeah, and I think one of the hooks, and again, I use it as a signal and I reveal it even to the leaders and say, let's work on the stickiest of problems. How many of you can, put down on a sticky, a problem that has emerged in your retrospectives again and again and again. You thought you solved it, it came back again. And you thought you solved some more and it came back again. Yeah, let's work on those things, right?
I'm reminded of that Gottman thing. Was it like 66% of problems are perpetual or whatever? And that's not the right percentage, but it's something like that.
Yeah,
that a large percentage of these problems just keep coming back.
And these are the systemic issues. So are we going to ignore these systemic issues or are we going to do something about it? Yeah. If we want to do something about it, it's going to take time. Yeah. Let's workshop the hell out of it. Is my answer to the problem, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Any kind of last story you want to tell about all of this and maybe one of those, oh gosh, it didn't go wells?
Oh gosh, it didn't. I mean, every technique I have tried, I have, actively sought feedback on these techniques and I've tried them out, sometimes cold, sometimes even very well prepared. So I got lots of war stories, if you will. But I will say this, in my first move with the leadership team was to do a paper constellation. This was to talk about the topic of transformation.
I love paper constellations.
Agile transformation, a bunch of VPs in the room. The sponsor is not in the room. The sponsor is the one paying, and he's the boss of all of these VPs. And it just occurred to me, and I hadn't checked in with my other coaches on the team. I'm like, I want to try this and see what their relationship is with transformation so far, right? For us to really understand who's who in the zoo, what is their relationship, how do they think they can move the needle on this agile transformation thing. Tried paper constellations. And as I explained, and I did a little bit of education, right, the VPs were like, oh, we're all aligned. Oh my God, we all know exactly what needs to happen in this transformation. Step 1, step 2, step 3. That's it. Let's go. Like, okay, let's just take a little bit of time and put it down on paper. And let's see how it aligns. And oh my God, when I took all of these papers that they drew individually without revealing and I put them on a wall, it was like, Oh, but I thought we were close. I thought we were aligned. Oh, we're not.
Yeah.
We have some work to do over here.
Yeah.
I mean, that took courage. The rest of the coaches were like, God knows what she's doing. What the hell is this one up to? Gonna
That's
tell
so
a bunch
great.
of PTs they're not aligned.
Yeah.
But I think that opened up with so much future coaching opportunity. I mean, it's the best story I can tell. Such a small, simple tool, right?
Yeah.
Which led to so much work. And eventually I was able to try, with very sticky issues, deep democracy with them, right? It didn't, I was courageous enough, I shall say, right? It didn't frighten me because of that experience, right? So
that's great.
It's amazing. Yeah. And to bake it in with other techniques that we so know as Agilists, right? The design thinking techniques come naturally to us, but it's the same principle. We're working with humans. We want every voice to be heard. We respect them, right? And yes, it's all within a time box. So they fit perfectly in my little brain anyway.
No, I agree. There's just so much natural, to use the buzzword, synergy between what we learn as ORSC practitioners and how lots of the other natural things we're doing as Agilists and just putting it together, which I think is great. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you've also applied ORSC coaching competencies in coaching couples, right? It's completely outside of the business and corporate setting.
Absolutely.
And so not to really get you telling stories about that, but as we wrap up, I do want to know, how has this journey in ORSC impacted the rest of your life?
Deeply. I think the quality of relationships I hold are that much more intentional. And that word is really, really meaningful, right? Where as a traveling, coach, up until the pandemic hit anyway, making the best use of the time I have with my family together and making sure that it's intentional, quality time I spend has been that much more joyous, right? As a result of being ORSC trained and ORSC, certified, if you will. And I have learned so much, actually, from the couples that I have coached, because I was able to see different angles, from the work that I was doing, and to hold that meta skill of curiosity and understand that I am no expert. I am not a counselor, so to speak.
Yeah.
But to see them unlock, if you will, or get unstuck from the little things that were, holding that relationship back. I remember a story where I was working with a couple, and it was something as simple as loading and unloading a dishwasher that was causing so much angst to the point where they didn't want to even see each other and talk to each other.
Ooh.
To it's like simple things, right? And then you have that conversation, and then you get back to the basics on, we did a simple thing as myth, right? Original myth, and, doing that exercise and having that conversation is like, oh, that is such a simple thing. Okay, here's what I can do. I can just set up a Kanban system. I do this with my teams all along. I can do this with you. Let me just put a signal that says, this is what it needs and this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that'll work. Let's try that, right?
Yeah.
A simple thing like that. And it gave me so much joy. It's not like I added any value, but allowing the space and creating the container for this conversation that had escalated, from such a simple thing to really, oh my God, I can't even I can't even talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience, I should say.
That's great. That's great. Shaila, last real question here. What advice do you want to give to anybody who's thinking about starting out on their journey?
I'm going to say experiment and make it count for you. Make it truly count for you, right? If you have a passion for helping others and working with people, this is the right journey to be on.
Yeah.
Because every moment you will find opportunities to put this into practice. You don't have to design something and go way out of your way. The opportunities present themselves every day, each day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. How did we do in terms of, telling some stories, talking about expectations of Agile coaches, bringing in some of the adjacent techniques and sharing those? How did we do conveying what you wanted to convey today?
I think we did great. I think to sum it all up, right? I would say you are working day to day in a human system. So don't lose sight of that and continue to be curious, have fun, right? And employ a plethora of techniques, whatever there is out there, to honor the system that you're working with.
Yeah, honor the system. How did we do at honoring our system today in terms of that DTA that we did?
I think we did great.
Did you have enough fun?
Question. Yes, I had fun, and I did employ the courage aspect as well in telling some of the more difficult stories. But overall, I think the message is good. Maybe we can work on being more clear. That's always my pet peeve. How can I summarize it more clearly, more succinctly?
You did a good job of bottom lining. Like, even if as you talked around some things, you're like, okay, so let me just bottom line that. So you always kind of brought us back home, and that was really actually beautiful to witness.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts you want to share with folks before we wrap up?
Enjoy, have fun.
Yeah.
Keep trying stuff. Be curious.
Awesome.
Keep learning.
Yeah. I second all of that. Thank you, Shaila, for being here so much. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for letting my voice be heard, really, in the community. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for listening to this episode of the ORSC LAB on Agile Uprising. You can always follow the hashtag ORSC, O-R-S-C, on Twitter to join in on the conversation. And don't forget to subscribe to Agile Uprising on iTunes or your other favorite podcast provider so you can get notifications of new episodes as soon as they're available. Talk to you next time.